So Love Your Channel is back. And as always, we're talking to YouTubers to learn something about them, their channels, and to get their tips and advice that you can use to start and grow your own channel. Today, we're talking music. And my guest is a creator that shares his passion for rock and roll with excellent deep dives on his favorite artists and a unique style that I find really interesting and engaging. His name is Robert. The name of the channel is Robert's Record Corner, and he's joining me all the way from beautiful Portland, Oregon. First, let's welcome Robert. Robert, thanks so much for joining me on Love Your Channel.
Thank you so much for having me, John. Flattered to be here. Happy to talk about music and YouTube and wherever this goes. I'm all in.
Okay, everybody gets the same first question. Let's say you meet somebody who learns that you have a YouTube channel. They ask you what it's all about. How do you answer?
Oh, well, I'll probably say in a very self-deprecating way, depending on if I know the person or not. But I do videos where I play records and talk about them, is the short version of it. I think I look at 1960s, 1970s rock and roll primarily. It's not all I listen to, but it's something I've spent so many years playing with. And I consider myself a chronologist. And so I always try to think about when and where this album or this song or this band appeared in relation to other things going around it. So I try to give hopefully some context. And long term, you see rock and roll as something that was so important to me and so important to so many people. And it's not as important as it once was. It just simply isn't. It isn't as important or as successful as it once was. It doesn't mean it's dead. Doesn't mean that there isn't good quality rock and roll. But when you go back and you look at the legends and the milestones of rock and roll, ideally you're hopefully helping people that are maybe new to it to give some kind of context. So no one's going to listen to me talk that long about an answer, but those are the kinds of things I might say, about what it is, Robert's
So
Record
before
Corner
we get
channel.
into your channel, why don't you tell us something more about yourself? What keeps you busy when you're not thinking about music, planning your videos, making your videos?
Yeah. Well, I spent most of my career in travel publishing. I was, I worked at Lonely Planet Travel Guidebooks, and I was a digital nomad at National Geographic Traveler. So I traveled a whole lot. Then I spent 4 years at a PBS station in Oklahoma. I was back for family there and worked on an art show. And now I'm back in Portland. I have family in Portland. My daughter's here. And I work at the world's greatest bookstore. I buy used books for Powell's Books, which I absolutely adore being around that community. Not only the people that work there, people go there. So I do that in addition to this. And if I'm not doing either, then I'm either walking in the woods or reading books. And so enjoying things a lot here in Oregon for sure.
Give us a rough estimate, maybe a very rough estimate on the size of your record collection.
Well, I don't know. It's hard for me to estimate. I'm looking at it. I think I have about 800 records. I think I've once had maybe about 1,000, and every now and then I'll pare things down. And there's times for me that I feel like, oh, that's nothing. It's not the kind of stuff that I want. I want to have 1,600, and the next 800 would be profoundly different records. Or I get rid of all of them, and have it all streamed and stuff. But I think I'm okay right now, keeping these 800 and adding to it slowly.
Yeah, you mentioned streaming. I was going to ask, have you given in to the temptation to maybe kind of sort of move over to Spotify or iTunes, or are you the dedicated vinyl guy?
Well, I listen to vinyl at home. I like the ritual of picking out the record and listening to the full record and listening to the crackle when the needle goes down, particularly of older records and things. I do have a streaming at Spotify, and I use it to organize and think and research music usually that I already have. So one of my favorite things is to reorder albums. Like I did a video about Rolling Stone's Some Girls. I don't think the order of the songs is correct, so I change it and things like that. But I will listen to things like in the car primarily, particularly as I'm researching a video. But I often use streaming for things I already have on record, but for the convenience of it.
You have the definitive collection of Kinks videos on your channel. Actually, it has to be the internet's top source of information about the Kinks for sure. I was going to ask you about this later, but since we're talking about it now, I'll go ahead and ask now. As long as we're talking about records and vinyl, there was a time when record was basically another word for album. even if it
Mhm.
was a different format, you could say a band's first record, and it could be a cassette, could be CD, whatever. But the name of your channel and the way your angle to the whole topic of rock and roll is very much about the physical form of the vinyl record. What role does that vinyl play in your music experience, and what do you think the current generation of, let's say, music fans are missing out on by having the clean, perfect digital experience?
Well, I mean, a lot of, younger music fans are getting into vinyl more now, which is interesting. Though it's so expensive that it's very difficult to build up much collections. I like it because for a lot of reasons. I mean, one is nostalgic. It's how I got to music for sure. I believe in the 45-minute format for an album. I think that 40 to 45 minutes for most albums, some a little less. I think that that neatly matches what our attention span is for a group of new songs. And so as you got to CDs, albums suddenly became 60 and 70 minutes, and they really didn't need to be. They had the technology for longer space, but I do think it stretched our attention and it broke down how an album hangs together. Now, every now and then you have double albums, but not that often, historically. So I think the record, the constraints of the technology of basically having on one vinyl disc 20 minutes aside is either how we become conditioned to take in music, but I think it actually is kind of fits perfectly for a new group of songs. I like turning the record over halfway through because it makes you think about how the experience ends halfway through and then how you pick up again. Sometimes albums don't really take advantage of that, and sometimes they do. They think about something that will, like at the end of a chapter of a book, is it a cliffhanger or is there something about it that keeps you going? And albums that are constructed in really interesting ways think about that. And then the artwork is so interesting because you're holding this in your hands and it's a piece of artwork that they put a lot of thought into. And as you have going into streaming and albums become a little stamp sized cover, what jumps out are bold, big images. And the subtlety of a Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band would have never been thought about or created for something so small. And so when you have the record and it's a gatefold maybe and you open up, it adds to your experience of what that album means, who that artist is, what those songs are. And I think that it doesn't mean it can't happen now, but I find that very arresting and fascinating to go back and sometimes hearing things I haven't heard before and how the artwork itself takes on its own impact to what the overall feeling and experience of the album is.
Yeah, two things just quickly. One, you made some references to double albums and long albums and kind of what's the difference these days. You explain this really well. You have a video dedicated, I think it's called "The Rise and Fall of the Double Album," where you give us a really to the point history of the advent of the LP replacing the 78s and how that gave rise to, I think you say, I guess I don't know if this is this fact or opinion. You say Bob Dylan's "Blonde on Blonde" was the first double album. Is that just a simple fact or
Um,
what?
for rock and roll,
For rock
it
and roll.
is
Okay, for rock and roll, that's true.
Zappa.
Okay.
Frank Zappa had one. I'm talking studio albums because you might have live double albums and
Oh,
stuff
that's true
before, but
too. Yeah, that's true too.
Frank Zappa's like "Freak Out" is like was like 2 months after Dylan. And I didn't realize that till I got comments, and so I did a kind of a reaction video to that
You
Zappa
did.
album, which I didn't
You
do
did.
too well. But yeah, I do think that Blonde on Blonde is fascinating because when you see it on, you know, in a record store, it's sideways because the gatefold opens, so it's long ways, a long picture of him with the same coat that he would have on the cover of John Wesley Harding too. The and so you have that. It's a little out of focus, and it doesn't say Bob Dylan "Blonde on Blonde" anywhere, and it's a double album. And the first song on it is "Rainy Day Women" number 12 and 35. Everybody Must Get Stoned. This is '66, and it's like a New Orleans jazz funeral band playing. And people get sick of that song and stuff, but that was really jolting in '66. A
Sure.
double
Sure.
album. You had a song that filled a whole side with "Sad Eyed Lady It's a Lone Land," out of focus cover, sideways. Oh wow, what a jolt that was, and leave it to Dylan really to think about really breaking open that mold. I mean, a lot of bands were obviously Beatles, etc., but that's a big one. That's a big one when
Yeah,
that came out.
yeah, it's funny you say that. It showed up in record stores. No name, no title. And I guess a lot of fans recognize Bob Dylan on the cover, but I was thinking of Led Zeppelin 4. Same thing. It shows up in a record store,
Yeah.
no title, no name. But what is Zeppelin 4? Like 1971, 2? This is 6 years
71.
later or so than Dylan. Interesting. But I just wanted to finish that point about what you say about double albums and long albums. It made me laugh. And you show how the length of albums significantly increased after CDs really hit big. And you use the
Uh-huh.
Rolling Stones as an example. Suddenly the Rolling Stones are putting out 65-minute albums. And you made a comment. I don't remember exactly what you said. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but you kind of sarcastically questioned why we needed another 20 minutes of early 90s Rolling
Yeah.
Stones on these albums. We didn't need it, actually. But and the other thing I
No,
wanted to
we
mention,
didn't.
again, just quickly, I'm going off on my own tangent here. When you were describing the experience of vinyl, it took me back to when I was a teenager. I remember holding those records that I bought, by the way. That's kind of a weird thing for kids today to understand the idea of buying records. But anyway, and just holding it, obsessing over the artwork, the liner notes, we used to call them, the lyrics on the sleeve. It was just an
Mhm.
experience. It was immersive. And it was literally an investment, and we would listen to it over and over and over. And today you just swipe to the next album. If you don't like the first 30 seconds, you just go to the next one.
Mhm.
Okay. I'll stop my angry old man rant right now. I'll just move on to something else. Okay, Robert, I put together a few more questions here to take a deeper dive into your musical knowledge and experience and opinions
All right.
around certain bands and musicians. Now, I may have put together too many questions here. So instead of cutting some questions out, I'm going to make you go rapid fire. Okay. I
Okay.
want
Rapid
short
fire.
or kind of short answers so I don't have to cut any questions. I can get through more stuff, short or short-ish answers. Okay. So are you ready
All
to go
right.
rapid fire, Robert? You ready for this?
I'm ready for rapid fire.
Oh, and just a warning. A couple of these questions are like this or that, to kind of force you to take a position. So don't
Okay.
take the easy way out and try to go middle of the road. Okay. And you have to
Okay.
take a position. Okay. That's the rule.
I
Okay. Let's
love
get
it.
started with rapid fire. The Rolling Stones today, rock on or please retire?
Oh, rock on. Why not? Go on. No one's done it before. Let them go to their 100.
The album or the year or the approximate time when the best era of Rush came to an end?
85. Power Windows.
Power Windows. Okay. Hold Your Fire, the next album, was my point of entry for Rush. And so I kind of look back on that with good feelings.
Yeah.
The album after that, Presto, was kind of eh. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
Power Window, or maybe even before that. What was before that? Permanent
Grace
Waves?
Under
Is that
Pressure, 84.
Grace Under Pressure? Of course, Grace Under Pressure. Good stuff.
Signals, 82. Yeah.
I totally understand that the sound of this guy's voice makes you say, please, please make it stop. John Anderson of Yes or Geddy Lee of
Mm.
Rush?
Oh, neither. I like them a lot. If I have to pick one, I'll pick John Anderson.
Oh,
But he's a great, a
yeah.
lot of great singer. He's a great singer. Well, because I am so connected to Getty. I can't put down Getty. And Getty's voice really stopped screeching around 80 with Free Will, the end of Free Will in 80. That's the last time he really screeched. And he took voice lessons and he started working with lower register. That John Anderson thing is an acquired taste for some. I think it's beautiful. I don't find either of them qualify for that, though I know a lot of people do.
Distinctive is the word, is the polite word. Euphemism, maybe.
Distinctive.
Distinctive voices, right? Yeah. Is there any angle of the story of the Kinks that you haven't covered on your channel? Because, as I said earlier, it seems to be the definitive collection.
Yeah. I mean, all kinds of things. I mean, I could just go in on Dave Davies, the brother, what he could have done. Could he had a bigger solo career or a bigger impact on Kinks for sure? Um, I did a discography of everything and broke it down into 7 eras and just wanted to have an overview of the Kinks. And, you could go deep into a song, or an album, Muswell Hillbillies from 72 should be a documentary about class and, reconstruction of neighborhoods in London. You could get really serious about social political angles on that album, which I really like. But yeah, there's always maybe Dave Davies is next.
Yeah, let me just say this one more time for anybody watching. If you are a Kings fan and you haven't been to Robert's channel, you need to do that. Okay? I'll just say, put it that way. And last question, Robert. Me personally, I stopped being interested in new music somewhere around 1993, and I'm convinced that everything since then sucks. Two-part question for you. Did you experience something similar? And if yes, what was your year?
I mean,
Yeah.
1980, 1978, 1975 is a real dividing point for me in a lot of ways. And I was a barely listening alive, and so it is stuff. It's prehistory, but as you get into music and you listen to something, you want to find the source of it. And generally speaking, bands that are redoing the Beatles or redoing Led Zeppelin or redoing the Who or the Stones or whatever it is aren't really as good. And so you find your way back to the sources of where rock and roll was really forged in the 60s. And I go deep on it. I want to know everything. I want to know what I don't like by them. I want to know the albums that failed. I want to know the albums that were experimental and strange and better than you thought. And I want to study that. And so I always go backward. And it's the same, like I listen to a lot of jazz now, and it's, you go from about 57 to 68 or so in jazz. I don't listen to much 70s jazz. I don't listen to much really early jazz. And that's that period. I almost can get anything from that period and go after, you know. So for whatever reason, maybe it's the heyday of the vinyl age that I respond to. I don't know. But I like I know it's really long now. It's the last question, but so like I like, you suddenly get into a band and then you have a whole discography to explore. I like that. In real time, you can talk about new bands that I hear and people like this, like Geese and Otoboke Beaver and all these kind of bands, and I'll listen to some of them sometimes. And there's a few bands I forgot the names of that I think are good, but you could wait now you used to be that you would wait a year for a new album. Now you have to wait 2 or 3 years, sometimes more, between albums. I'm not that patient to see how their discography builds. Maybe in 10 years from now I would go back and look at their 10 years, because I love being able to navigate through a whole career of someone and seeing the dips, the rises and falls, the experiments, the utter failures, the great successes, the B-sides, and I love diving into that world. I love it. Maybe I'm just a total nerd about that, but so
Before we continue, let me say a quick word about Riverside, the platform I use to arrange interviews, edit everything, and more. Riverside is an all-in-one platform that lets you record, edit, live stream, host webinars, and basically do everything you need as a creator. It offers tons of advanced features, but in my experience, the best part has been how easy it is to get started and produce videos. If you want to get hands-on and be in charge of every detail, Riverside gives you the tools you need to do it. If you want to put everything on autopilot and let their amazing AI-powered tools do all the heavy lifting, you can do that too. It's up to you. And I have to mention their amazing support team, which has answered me quickly every time I messed up or couldn't find a button that turned out to be right in front of me. So if you're looking to get started or start over with the perfect platform to record and connect with others, check out Riverside. Yeah, it's amazing to go back and realize that, the Beatles and other bands of that era regularly issued 3 albums in 1 calendar year. Even going into the 70s, a band like Rush, for example, they would put out 2 albums in 18 months and do that
yes,
over
that's
a
right.
period of 10 years. And today,
Mhm.
your Metallicas of the world are doing well if they get 2 albums in a decade. It's bizarre. But then again, that's because they're on the road making $700 billion trillion
Yeah,
on tours these days, and so that's the reason.
I do think it hurts the fans, though. I think
Oh,
it
for
hurts the
sure,
fans because if you
for
think,
sure.
when you are trying to cultivate your interest in music and you're 15 or 17 or 18 or 21 years old, you can't really, those are big, you're so dramatically different between ages 15 and 21. If your favorite band only makes 2 albums in that period, you haven't really got to age with them at that key moment when you're really forming alliances and thinking about music, etc. And I understand that it's asking too much to have a band to have a new album and a look every 3 months or 6 months or maybe a year. Maybe it's a lot, but we've gone in some cases too far the other way. And I think it cheats the bands. I made a video about this because I think that, like, if the Beatles weren't essentially forced to make albums every 6 months or so, there are songs and albums that would not exist because they had that pressure internalized and externalized to create new things and stay relevant as music was changing so rapidly. You suddenly have, whatever it is, like Help. The song Help was made because they just said, hey, we're going to make another movie. It's called Help. So John Lennon went and wrote the song before Paul could. It's a classic song, #1 song, and it probably doesn't exist if they didn't have that kind of cadence. So when you're making more music and the forge is hot, like Metallica's at the end of their career now, right? But when you're young and hungry still, almost everything that you hit, if you're a good band, has value. It's good. The Beatles could do no wrong. What if they only made an album every 2 or 3 years? Think about all that would have been lost. You know, that's my opinion on it. Some people maybe don't see it that way, but I think that you need to have a little bit more frequency, particularly those first 10 years of an artist when you're
Well,
really
I think it's
hung,
I think it's also fair to point out, Robert, that the economic kind of turned upside down. There was a time, and you and I were both there for it, when touring was actually a lost leader for album sales. That was the point, to buy the album, and so it made sense to make more albums. Now it's reversed. An album is simply an excuse to get people to buy concert tickets, and so the emphasis is on touring. That's
yeah,
where the money is, because bands, even the
yeah,
biggest bands, don't make that much money from album sales anymore, and so it only makes sense that the emphasis on album and album creation would decrease. It's all related. Watching your videos, I'm
yeah,
kind of reminded of how, when you're talking music or television or movies or whatever, and offering an opinion, uh, you either get people who 100% agree because you're validating their choices and what they like, or
yeah,
you get people who are
right,
100% convinced you're a complete idiot and you're stupid and you suck and you need to
yeah,
go away, etc. There's no middle ground, basically.
yeah,
It seems that way. But
yeah,
watching your stuff,
yeah,
it seems like you you often try to make an effort to find that middle ground. Some of your stuff is, it's love letters to the artists that you love already. It's, these guys are great because XYZ. At the same time, though, you have lots of videos where you're trying to convince the haters. You're kind of reaching out to the other side saying, you should reconsider this. Is this deliberate? Is
yeah.
this just how it worked out? How did this come about?
Well, on one level, I don't really care what people like. And I don't mean that in a cold way. It doesn't matter to me if someone doesn't like the Kinks or the Stones or whatever I'm talking about. That's okay. You don't rush. You don't have to like it. That's fine. Um, what what I do is I see opportunity when you see a certain criticism over and over again, and I don't know that it's a fully rounded picture of what they're talking about. So I see an opportunity to go in. Everyone says Rush, Geddy Lee's voice is a screechy, high pitched wail, sounds like a hyena, but he really hasn't sung like that since 1980 on record. Maybe when he's doing old songs in concert. And his voice is hard to take in the 70s at times, but he got it under control in the 80s. And so I think that there's this constant thought about his voice that is just completely predicated by a no longer relevant description of it. So I'm not trying to attack someone by that. I just look at it as a fun way to talk about this. I think when I started the channel, I didn't really know what kind of tone I wanted. I could be very sarcastic in person. And as I've gone on, I figured out my balance is about 75% facts. I want to talk about when they recorded it, what other things were going on, the problems they had, who did the album cover, who produced it, how long the solo is, whatever. Facts. And then you have about 20% subjective, and then 5% stupid jokes. And so, but you want it to have that, even if someone has listened to the Kinks concept albums in the 70s all their life, if they watch that series of videos, and they made 5 concept albums in 4 years, is crazy. No one went into concept more than the Kinks. And it's usually put down a lot. But if they go into it, I want them, even someone that listens to it a lot, I want them to learn something or thinking about it on a very objective, fact-based way that's different. I need to add value to that, but ultimately there is opinions. I thought about starting this channel and calling it Better Than the Beatles. Every week I talk about something that's better than the Beatles. What is that? Maybe You Really Got Me by Kinks in 1964 is a better, more important rock song than any song the Beatles made in 64. I actually think it is. I think it is over time. Wasn't as successful. It was #1, but it wasn't as successful as the Beatles. but it makes more sense. It adds more value to what rock and roll would become. So, but I didn't want to do that because after a while it becomes so negative and people get upset. But I do get tired a little bit of Beatles supremacy, that anything the Beatles did is better than anything else. And so I thought about that a little bit, and I love the Beatles, but I wanted to find a place that's generally positive and fact based. That's, and then you do some dumb jokes and occasionally throw opinion in.
No, you say that you say it's 5% dumb jokes. They're not dumb. I watching your stuff. Actually, I would bump that number up to, I don't know, maybe 15%. Robert, I sense an inner comic looking for a platform here. I sense an inner comic searching for opportunities to kind of show what he can do. Am I right?
Well, I think that initially when I was tinkering around with these videos, when I started creating the channel, and I didn't mean to create it, I just suddenly started doing it really randomly. I was very sarcastic up front. And I would have a lot more kind of absurdist takes of things. I mean, I did do the history of the band Yes with pipe cleaners and trying to illustrate the crazy, network of different rotating band members and lineups they had. And on a lot of it, I was saying, well, if Jackson Brown's on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Yes should be. And it was kind of a attack on Jackson Brown, who doesn't matter a whole lot to me. I hate to say it. But as I started, I realized, oh, I'm getting a lot of viewers that are watching this with English as a second language. That surprised me. I was getting a lot of South Americans watching it, and actually now less than in my early experimental video. But and I realized that I needed to do a tone that I think could translate into English as a second language a little bit. That people were interested in classic rock stories for education purposes and maybe seeing things differently. So that kind of played into how I do it. But on one level, it would be fun to just, I don't know. I guess the thing is what I've learned is when I talk about something, I try to like it. I try to like it. And so if I'm listening to 1980s Kinks albums, which never meant anything to me, I'm trying to like it, and I'm trying to find the stuff that I think is really good in it. And I get surprised. And that's what I've learned throughout my whole listening experience in my life, that if you're open to things, you can usually find something good about it. You don't have to like everything. But if you're listening to some kind of free jazz that's all over the place with just this noise of horns overlapping each other, on one level, it's very jarring, but then you try to find some harmony in it. But it's an intention. I wanted to do that, and I found it. I wanted to find things that I like with what I think are really horribly produced Rush albums. I don't like the sound of the Hold Your Fire album, but I like the album a lot. I don't like that production very much. I don't like those keyboards and power windows, but I like the album a lot. And so because I just made that decision to navigate through something that at first is a little jarring to me. And then, in some cases you're rewarded for it.
Before we continue, a quick reminder that Love Your Channel is available as a podcast. If you're more of the listening type, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music. Links in the description below, of course. And if you're listening to us right now on one of those podcasts, don't forget we are on YouTube. So if you're more of the watching type, you can find us over here on YouTube. Oh, and if you're more of the reading type, and I know you're out there somewhere, we have a Substack as well. It's like a blog. If you don't know what Substack is, check it out. Again, link in the description below. I make text versions of every interview that I do, and you'll find one there with Robert as well. So check that out. Okay, Robert, I want to ask you about your titles and thumbnails on your channel because I really like both of them. First, let's go with let's talk about titles. And now I'm going to read a few of them and just let them speak for themselves because I think they're fantastic. 6 ways to turn Rush haters into fans. What to tell Yoko Ono haters. Frank Zappa's best fans made me do this. And this is my personal favorite. You mentioned it once. A history of the band, Yes, as told with pipe cleaners. And you've got to check this out. It's fantastic. I love it. So you're hitting all the right psychological buttons there, I think, Robert, including the element that convinces people that they have to click now to check out whatever the hell you're talking about. So well done there. You can tell me
Mhm.
about your approach to titles right after I say a word about your thumbnails. Am I imagining this, or is there an aesthetic element of like 60s album covers in your thumbnails? Because I kind of sort of see that there, and I get it. It works. It kind of aligns
Yeah.
with the focus of your channel, so it just works. So again, well done. So Robert, over to you on the subject of your titles and thumbnails.
It's an ongoing process to understand what is the right mix. And a lot of people will say, you watch YouTube videos on this and stuff because you want people to find your video. If you're putting this work into it, you hope that people will watch it and like it and maybe say negative comments. I kind of enjoy that kind of conversation that you get. But if you don't have the right thumbnail and title, they're never going to see it. They're never going to find it. And so a lot of people will advise, and I do this, is you create, you're working on a story and you create your thumbnail and your title first before you start shooting video, before you write it. You might be getting a bunch of B-roll together and thinking about outlines of what you might talk about. But the 6 ways to turn Rush haters into fans. The thumbnail says she hates Rush. Pink background, unflattering photo of Rush in 1984 in the corner, and then a 1920s French woman on the beach that I found that looked a little disgruntled. Now, I'll admit, Rush is a band that, generally speaking, males like more than females. And as I say in the video, it is a myth that women don't like Rush, but there is no doubt that it's very common for, let's say, a relationship or a marriage where there is a husband that really loves Rush and a wife that does not tolerate or barely tolerates Rush. This is very common. And so I don't want to go into women hate Rush kind of thing, but you kind of allude to this thing that a lot of Rush fans know about. I'll be honest. And that is overwhelmingly my most watched video. For some reason, that connected with the Rush family out there. And, but the 6 ways to turn Rush haters into fans, none of them were listening to songs with vocals because I know that the main problem that people have that don't like Rush is the voice for this at least older idea of what Geddy Lee's voice is. So I came up with ideas that were not about listening to songs with lyrics. Then the following video, I give 10 songs that I think with lyrics that you could introduce to someone that doesn't like Rush. So I had those kind of two together. But that all started with the thumbnail and the title. And I want the title to be different than the thumbnail. And then you want the first 10 or 15 seconds of the video to confirm that that is indeed what's happening here in this video. So they don't feel like they got, clickbaited into something and it is an answer. You see that on YouTube sometimes. It creates some kind of friction and it's maybe alluded to 8 minutes later. That kind of thing it frustrates viewers. So you do want it to be honest, and that's what I try to do. But it's an art that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Sometimes you change it later, you tinker with the title, things like that.
Yeah, like you said, there's no shortage
Learning
of
as I go.
advice on YouTube about how to get thumbnails right, how to work on your titles. It's like a science. It actually is part art and part science, I guess I would say. But I think there's nothing wrong with being deliberate about your titles and thumbnails. We'll put it that way. I mean, a lot of people, they don't want to be clickbaity. It's not being clickbaity to come up with titles and thumbnails that get attention. Like you said, if your titles and thumbnails don't work, it doesn't matter what you put into your video because nobody's going to see it. And so the reality is that you do have to stand out and draw attention before anybody watches the first second of your video. And that means having good titles and thumbnails. So yeah, don't feel bad about, strategizing about what's going to work. But as you say, you also have to, there's a term for this. I think, the payoff, basically confirming in the first 10, 15 seconds that yes, what you saw and what you're expecting is exactly what I'm going to deliver. So there is there's a right way to do it as well. But yeah, I'm really impressed by it. What about this, the aesthetic of your thumbnails? Am I imagining things when I see some 60s album covers there?
That's funny. I haven't thought of it literally like that, but A lot of times people will have these fake images of them like listening and reacting to a song. I put
Right.
myself in a thumbnail only a couple times. Was that kind of applicable to what it was? I generally want to have image of band and pretty consistent font. And I like that. I'll think about that. I'll look at 1960s albums and like, how do I make it look more like an album cover? Like literally look like an album cover. That's a good idea. And I hadn't really thought of it. Maybe I just internalized it so much. But I do like that it's consistent, has different color background, and you bring in. So I try to make them look so they're recognizable as part of a kind of a channel, that kind of thing. So I don't know.
Robert, you strike me as someone who has no problem coming up with creative ideas about how to present a story. But the challenge, of course, is how to make that happen on camera. So walk us through the process of the journey from when you visualize the idea and what you want to talk about and how you want to present it to actually making it work in the video that you upload to YouTube.
Some people will plot out a strategy over 3 months or 6 months or a year. I do not do that because I go a lot on whim about what I'm going to do. I often will cluster, if I'm going into the Beach Boys, I'm going to get 2 or 3 videos out of it now. Later, I may do more, but I don't. It's too much work in terms of listening and thinking about what your story is that it lends itself to a clustered video coming out. I know that some videos that I have planned will not do very well. I have videos planned on Roxy Music and on King Crimson, and I know that isn't going to bring big numbers or anything like that. My challenge to myself is, how could I get more people to watch King Crimson? So if I'm talking about King Crimson, um, I need to think really hard about the entry point that will be able to lasso in people that don't care about King Crimson, so that maybe some of them will watch and accept that it won't be as popular as some videos that I've done. That's okay. I think it's important, and I'm doing it for my own fun, and I want to talk about King Crimson. Right now, I'm working on. I'll always go back to the Stones because I listen. I have every Stones album, obviously, and I listened to the Stones all my life, and they were my favorite band growing up and all. And I see them as a barometer to understand anything that's going on. If I hear a Portuguese rock band that I've never heard of, and they're using a wah-wah pedal, I can tell you that came out in 1974 or 1975 because the Rolling Stones used it in 73. And they're going to be later. I think it's probably 75 for Portuguese rock, actually, but maybe 74. And so I use the Stones as a barometer to understand what's going on. And they're very good up until, 80, 83 or so. They're really good at being able to judge what's going on around them, rock. You can really use them that way. But anyway, I'm going to do some 3 videos right now about the strangest Rolling Stone songs that were released in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so I'm trying to develop more of a niche, close thing, not like all of the Rolling Stones albums in 20 minutes, because it's such an overwhelming thing to do, but try to zero in on smaller subjects and see if I can get something that will say a lot about looking at one moment of the Stones. So I just wanted to pick these strange songs they released. Really? They released that as a single? Why? What was going on around them? And so right now I'm talking about the Stones song We Love You from 67, which is when they were busted and they went to jail in 67. And they came out of jail and they made this song that is so sarcastic. And a lot of people like John Lennon thought, they're just ripping off All You Need Is Love, which is really kind of not a very nuanced way of looking at the song because it is so dark and so sarcastic. We love you. We know you love you. Well, they were being hounded by media and authorities and police and trying to get them. They arrested 3 Stones in over a couple months and trying to get them to stop making music. And so they made a single, which was in their face, showed Brian Jones as stoned as he possibly could be in the video in a court case with Keith as the judge. And they were playing off Oscar Wilde's controversial case in the early 1900s, and it was really interesting. So what I can talk about is what I'm trying to do is pick a song that's kind of forgotten and not successful and make it into a much bigger issue about authorities and censorship of music and how you respond to it. Like, Leonard Skinner makes a sarcastic song about the record company, MCA. That That's not very interesting to most viewers. But the Stones, with kind of a forgettable song, did something quite interesting, you know. And so what I'm hoping to do, I'm giving you way too long an answer, but what I'm trying to do is come out with a bigger picture to a little moment. And I think that will simplify how I make videos because sometimes they take so long to do, and I use a lot of B-roll and things, and it becomes overwhelming, and you can spend 30 or 40 hours on it and things like that. But it's all fun. I don't mind doing that. But you know, some music channels, it's just them watching a song, a video, and reacting to it. And I don't, and some of those are good. Some are good, but most of them, I don't understand why I'm watching it. You know, it's I don't see a lot of value because I don't, you know, I'm not that interested in a person responding to something. I want to learn something from it more. And the best reaction videos are someone who's like the ones, my charismatic voice, an opera singer listening to rock for the first time, and her take on it is highly intelligent and gives you a very different viewpoint of something that you wouldn't have expected. So you're learning about music that you thought you knew from someone that has real musical training outside of rock, that kind of thing. So anyway, I mean, it's a long conversation. I give you really rambling answer, but I try to distill something that someone can learn something from and have fun watching, and that hopefully won't be too hard to produce and put together and edit.
How about your narration of your videos? How much of it is scripted? How much is ad-libbed? And if you're scripting, how much time do you typically put into the average script?
Well, you know, I worked at PBS before, and you would write scripts and stuff and then say them on camera. And I don't think that quite works for me. I do write scripts to a degree, but what I found, and I don't know that I recommend this, but what I do is I do it in pieces. And so I will do the first two parts on camera and I'll edit it because it will change my third part once I feel the tone of it coming together. And then I'll go and I'll maybe do it in three parts, and I'll have a script, and I, you know, I think if I could do it better, I would probably just go on camera and talk about something for 25 minutes, cut it down to 12, and then throw B-roll on it. It would be a lot easier and quicker to produce, but I don't tend to do it that way. I do write a script. I don't necessarily read the script, and then, but I do it choppy in different parts. So I have to always put on the same shirt and all that kind of stuff, so it looks like it's the same time. It takes longer to do that.
Tell us something about your tech stack, the hardware and software that makes it all happen.
Well, right now I'm using CapCut to edit. I have a like this whatever this little Sony cam is that I have on a tripod with a mic that I, you know, a lapel mic, and I have a couple lights, and I shoot that, import it to my computer, work on a Mac, and I use principally right now, as of recently, CapCut. And I use CapCut because there it's easier. You can do more with titles and transitions with it. It's kind of built for social media. Um, and then I use Premiere Pro to run the limiter on, to help with the audio levels. Um, but I find that there's things about Premiere Pro that I like better than CapCut, and there's some options that CapCut have that is easier and more interesting than Premiere Pro. And I don't know if that's irrational or not, but I tend to do all the editing on CapCut, throw it over on Premiere Pro, which I used before, and run the limiter and look at the volume more carefully there. But I think, you know, organizing files on Premiere Pro is superior, to CapCut, and also to finding the part of the clip that you want. CapCut is sometimes very difficult to find if you have a 5 minute piece and you're wanting to find 15 seconds to pull into where, you know, where you're working on it. It's a lot more clunky. So I'm still divided about which one works for me best, but that's what I'm doing right now.
How about advice for people trying to grow a channel? What would you say to them? And on top of that, if you could kind of turn back time and restart your own channel again, would you do anything differently? Two-part question.
Yeah. You know, what do you want to spend time with? You know, it's like I could be talking about Taylor Swift. You know, maybe I would get a younger audience and a bigger audience, or maybe not, but maybe a Gen X crusty, music fan trying to like Taylor Swift would be something, but I'm not interested in listening to Taylor Swift really. I'm not trying to put her down. I'm just not particularly interested in it. I don't want to spend that much time with it. I could do videos on music that I really don't like because I think it might do well, but I'm picking things that I'm genuinely interested in spending time with. And so, whatever your subject is, it could be doing taxes or traveling around the world or whatever it is, but something that you're generally wanting to spend a lot of time with, thinking about, writing, editing, watching other videos about is the most basic thing. You want to, watch some videos about how people grow. You're going to see all the tricks there. Don't think too hard. Make it easy for you to start getting videos. You want to have a consistent cadence, which I've not been good at lately because I have enough going on in my life. You wish you could do a video clockwork once every month, the first Monday of the month, or every Monday, or every Wednesday, or every other Wednesday. So you have a consistent timeline so people know when they can expect a video from you. I don't do that because my videos take so long that sometimes I don't have that ability. And so if I could change something, I would figure out a way. And I'm still trying to figure out a way that I can produce them quicker so I can have a more consistent base of it. I like that I have a consistent thumbnail and title strategy. I like that I cluster things so you have a whole bunch of Rush videos, a whole bunch of Kinks videos, and Beach Boys and Stones videos, so you can have your own playlists of it. And it's a work in progress. It's okay if the first 11 videos you haven't quite got your tone right. Keep going, and you're going to find the form. Because when I first started this channel years ago, I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to do stuff on a phone. I was like literally playing a record with a camera on the record and me talking about it for 40 seconds. That was it. I was just thinking shorts. And then you find your form and, start with something that you really want to spend a lot of time with and make sure you add to the conversation. Don't just add to the noise out there. Just try to come up with some angle that isn't out there. So you need to know what's out there so that yours can stand out. Doesn't, you want it to be a little different. And what I think that I do that's a little different is I think I put things in context with the time that they came out, maybe more than some. And then I use a lot of B-roll. I use music sound bites, which is tricky because if you use long sound bites, you'll get docked for copyright. So you have to figure out the way. But I think it's important for someone who's never heard this to have 5 seconds go, oh, yeah, I remember that song. Oh, I don't know what that is. Maybe I should listen to that. And so that takes a lot of extra work to get the sound and to get the B-roll. But I think that adds, I don't think that people want to look at my face for 20 minutes. So I want to give them something to look at, you know, that takes research. When you do videos, often it's video first. You want to think about, and this is hard with a script, because you could write a script and talk, and if you're not using B-roll, it doesn't matter. But if you're using B-roll, you need to make sure you can cover it. So sometimes you need to know what your visuals are before you start talking. That's what I learned at PBS for sure. That you have to, you think visual first. And I think I'm a lot better at that than I used to be because I was a writer in the beginning. And then I've switched around to thinking, even when I write, I'm thinking visually very first and foremost. So it's a lot of things. It's fun. You know, people are watching this stuff on TVs and tablets and their phones and on computers. It's taking over what TV is. A lot of people only watch YouTube. There's a great opportunity to do something on video here. And if you think that you want to do something like that, spend some time. Write down 20 ideas. Write down 30 ideas. Narrow it down to 5. Do 3 of them. Don't even publish it yet. Do the videos and see what it is. What's holding you up? What do you like about it? Learn about it. Then when you release 3 or 5 right up front, or every week so you have some build up a database. But really study what's out there. Watch the videos on growing channels. Watch your competition. Other videos done like it, and have fun with it. You might as well try if you're interested.
Robert, going forward on the channel, looking to the future, any goals in terms of subscribers or sponsorship or new directions for the content, some of which you've mentioned already? What can we expect going forward?
Well, I was busy last year And I put a lot into a 7-part kink series, which I started doing 4 years ago. I was thinking about, and I only did like 15 videos last year, and I'm disappointed. I think I would love to get it to about 30 videos this year, and I would like to. I have 7,200 subscribers. Um, I don't think so much in terms of sponsorship, but if in 2 years I can make $1,500 a month, and I don't make that every month, $1,500, then I could retire and move somewhere that's less expensive, and then go after it a little harder, because it's expensive here and you have to have, a job that takes a lot of time and energy away. So my goal is not massive, but I think it's more like maybe tripling the average numbers of views you get, getting your subscribers from 7,200 to, this year, I mean, 10,000 for sure. I don't have a number. I don't really know when when sponsorship comes in. I don't want to be reading about underwear in the middle of a video. I don't feel good about that. I'll take the free underwear. I could use some, but I don't I don't like it when you have like a 30, 60-second break and you talk about it in the middle of the video. And I get it, but I think the pop-up ads that people have to stomach and press the button, it feels fair game to me. And so, but if I could just get like triple the average views and, double or so the amount of money that's coming in, which is not a lot now, in the next year and a half, that would open up kind of how I could build the channel more. So I'm kind of patient with that, and just, getting to a better cadence.
Since you mentioned money, Robert, when or how long has it been since your channel was monetized?
So I had the channel in various incarnations, and I kind of geared everything and got serious about a year and a half ago, maybe a little less, maybe about 16 or 17 months ago. And I was doing videos every day, every week, there in the fall of a little over a year ago. And my goal was to get to the point when I had the watch hours that I could monetize it. And I did it surprisingly quickly. I got there like, I think it was monetized like in December of last year, so a little over a year. And it took me about 2 or 3 months to get to the point where I was monetized. And then, I've had, some success, or, with that to a degree. It rewards if you're a longer video and they have more pop-up ads. If it's under 8, you don't get more than one video ad. But I don't like videos that are an hour and a half long without cause. And I think that most of my subjects really shouldn't be more than 15 to 25 minutes. I think that's enough. And so I often, maybe it's a problem, but sometimes I don't get as conversational as I could be, because I'm trying to go quick. I'm trying to get it done. I want it to get done. You know, um, I want to not waste time. I want people to be able to get something on this subject in 17 minutes. And I know that very well that I could do that for 45 minutes, but I don't think they need to listen to it for 45. Uh, and that's probably stupid on my part, but that's how I look at it.
So, if you are a fan of any of the bands or musicians that Robert and I have talked about, you need to check out Robert's Record Corner and get his take on them. I promise you will learn something new. If you want the perfect example of the combination of a journalist's approach with a true fan's passion for the subject matter, go to Robert's Record Corner for a great lesson on how to engage viewers and keep them coming back. If you want to learn if you want to learn why you just might be wrong about Yoko Ono, as I was, again, now you know where to go. We can all learn from what Robert is doing, and I look forward to following him. Robert, congratulations on what you've done so far, and all the best going forward.
Thomas, thank you so much for reaching out. I'm flattered that you thought to talk to me and that you watched all these. You watched the Yes video with pipe cleaners. You went in deep. Thank you very much for this. I had a great time talking to you about this.
Excellent. Thanks again, Robert. And thank you for watching, everybody. Again, check out the podcast and Substack. If you just can't get enough of me, You can get even more there. Links in the description below, of course. And we'll see you next time on Love Your Channel.